Today we're going to talk about principles of democracy. There are 14 that we are going to look at. The first one is civic participation or citizen participation. And with that, basically, it takes place in many forms. It can be being informed, debating issues, volunteering, paying taxes, serving on a jury, or serving in the military. You can protest, run for public office, but through these different things, a stronger democracy is formed. Throughout this, you'll see I kind of give you a picture of what each looks like. Here you can see the debate, or one of the debates between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump in the 2016 election. 2 is regular, free, and fair elections. Elections must be held regularly, typically every couple of years. Officials must be chosen in a free and fair manner, where all votes are counted equally. And most people or most adults have the right to vote. And there are no obstacles preventing voting, whether it's intimidation, corruption, poll taxes, threats, etc. 3, we must accept the results of those elections. So assuming they're free and fair, we must honor those results. Ignoring those results goes against democracy. And then we always have to have a peaceful transfer of power from one leader to the next, which this precedent was established with George Washington when he voluntarily gave up the presidency after 2 terms in office. 4, you must have a rule of law. No one is above the law, not even a president. Okay, everyone must obey the law and must be held accountable for violating it. Okay? Laws must also be equally and fairly enforced. So in the United States, we have the Constitution. No one or nothing is above the Constitution. 5, you have to have majority rule with minority rights. With this, people are very concerned with tyranny of the majority, which is when minority groups are discriminated against because they don't agree with the majority. Okay, they often lack power to control the majority. The minority lacks power to control the majority. So the majority, when they destroy the rights of the minority and force them to agree, that is when we have tyranny of the majority. So a democracy is politically tolerant, which means that even though the minority doesn't have power, the majority is responsible for maintaining their rights and allowing them to voice their opinion. 6 is accountability. Elected officials must be held accountable. They must execute their duties according to the wishes of the people they represent. If not, they can be removed from office. 7 is transparency. In a democracy, government must be transparent in order for it to be accountable. They hold public meetings. The press is allowed to obtain certain information about decisions that are made and why those decisions are made, to let the people know what is actually happening within government. 8, you must have a limited government with a Bill of Rights. Okay, a Bill of Rights lists the rights and freedoms of the people. It limits the power of government and can guarantee certain freedoms. A Bill of Rights often protects people from government and people who might abuse their powers within a government. Okay, when a Bill of Rights becomes part of a constitution, it's easier for courts to enforce the Bill of Rights, as well as it makes it harder for governments to take away those rights. And that's one of the reasons why the Anti-Federalists wanted a Bill of Rights in the new Constitution, which we'll see later on. 9, you have a control of the abuse of power. In a democracy, you must control corruption. Government officials are often responsible for using public funds. When those public funds are used for private interests, that is a problem. Limited powers through checks and balances help with controlling this abuse of power. The executive branch has checks over the legislative and the judicial branches, And that can be said for the other branches as well in terms of having checks over the executive. You also have independent agencies and impartial courts that can investigate and punish government officials for any wrongdoing. Okay, when you can't control the abuse of power, you get an authoritarian government. For example, you have the Nazis and Adolf Hitler during World War II. 10 is economic freedom. Government allows for some private ownership of property and businesses. People can choose their job. They can join labor unions. You have different stances in terms of how much government involvement should be in the economy or how much government should regulate the economy, but there always should be some private ownership. Eleven is equality. Okay, all individuals are valued equally. They're free from unreasonable discrimination. Individual groups maintain their rights to have different cultures, languages, beliefs, personalities, religions, things like that. And people are always equal before the eyes of the law. Okay, they have political rights and they can advocate for equal rights. 12, individual or human rights. Okay, rights people have because they are human. Okay, we are born with these rights. You can call them natural rights. Some of these are stated in the Bill of Rights, including freedom of religion, freedom of speech, things like that. I know freedom of speech is limited, but we'll get into that later on this year. Freedom of assembly is another example as well. 13 is an independent judiciary. So the courts must be fair and impartial. Okay, judges should not feel pressured to act a certain way. They have the ability to act without being influenced from the other branches of government. In a democracy, judges should not be corrupt and not be influenced by businesses or various political groups. And the last one is competing political parties. So a political party is a group that has broad common political interests. They nominate candidates for office. They also conduct government and determine public policy. Within a democracy, you must have more than one political party where people have a choice. So here are some of the parties in the United States. You can kind of see government involvement and government control as well.